So good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Talent Finders would like to welcome entrepreneur, founder, and CEO of WordSmith Rapport, Karima Mariama, author ESQ. So welcome, Karima.
Hi, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So firstly, Karima, congratulations on all your achievements. Can you please share with us a little more about yourself and how your entrepreneurial journey started?
Yes, I think in my heart, ever since I was a child, I always had a desire to be a businesswoman, but I never knew what that would look like. And so somewhere still early in my youth, I decided that law was going to be the professional career for me. And, there were a lot of inspirations that led to that and a lot of encouragement and support just because of academically, how I really approached writing and speaking. And so everyone said, she's probably going to be a lawyer. And so law really started off for me to be a really exciting career, very rewarding. But at some point I felt like there was something more that was needed and a different kind of fulfillment.
Yes.
And so as I really, pressed myself and challenged myself to look outside of law, eventually I realized that there were some areas in the professional world that really needed some problem solved, and that was the area of leadership development and organizational management. And when I began to really research what individuals and organizations were going through and what some of their biggest performance challenges were, they really fell under those two buckets. And that really inspired me to take everything that I had learned from a career in law and as an advisor to transfer those skills into leadership development and organizational management and to develop my firm, WordSmith Rapport.
Amazing. So as you are the leading authority on leadership development and organizational performance management, as leadership or lack of leadership in our current narrative, what would you say is lacking in leadership, and what would you say is unique about your leadership style?
Well, that's really a good question. And I would say of the many things that I could point to, one of the things is a lack of understanding that leadership development doesn't end at whatever position that you find yourself in. And most of the times we're looking at people who are operating at a very high level. So the President of the United States, for example, or the CEO of a corporation or whatever high management role. When you look at yourself as, finally having made it, people put a period behind that experience. Yes. And really, what leaders need to understand is that leadership is a lifelong endeavor. It requires also lifelong learning, a constant introspection, looking at yourself, your development, and not just the areas that you're doing well in, perhaps the areas that you're really falling down in. And we all are falling down in areas. I don't care how bright you are and what you've achieved, there's going to be some areas of weakness. And if we fail to do that, then those mistakes and those missteps will show up in other areas of our life, and not just damaging us, but our relationships, our professional performance, and ultimately the way of the world. And I think that that's an area where people really need to take a closer look, the lifelong learning piece. And saying that, I would say that my leadership style is one that promotes leading at all levels. And because I think that lifelong learning is such an important piece, I encourage emerging leaders all the way up to the top to look at that lifelong learning piece and inspire them to perform in excellence and to pursue everything at the highest level, and not to think just because you're not the CEO of a corporation that you don't have the power to influence and lead, because leadership is really all about influence, and anyone has the power to do that.
Yes, absolutely. So what would you say some of your biggest lessons and learnings have been through your entrepreneurial journey?
Wow. there's been many.
Multiple, right?
Multiple. But if I were to look, especially earlier in my leadership journey, is not always believing that I might have been able to operate at a higher level just because I was beginning. And so that's a lesson that I teach entrepreneurs, and I share with entrepreneurs regularly. In fact, I was teaching a course yesterday and reminding folks that just because you're starting out doesn't mean that you can't still show up as your best self, that you can't still have, give yourself the permission to be confident in the areas that you are doing well and to step right up there with folks who have been doing it longer than you and show yourself to be in excellence. And so I just think that's a mistake that too many of us make, and we hide in the shadows, and we don't need to do that.
So, having previously worked in corporate, do you believe that this helped you in transitioning into your own business?
Yes, and that is because of a lot of the lessons that I was able to learn secondhand, watching other people operate at their best and also at their worst, seeing what some of the biggest missteps were and how we were able to navigate them, taught me some lessons and gave me some experience and examples to share with clients now about best practices and different ways of doing things, and maybe even blind spots that they weren't aware that existed. So having that context for the work that I do now has been extremely useful.
So this leads me to the next question. So what would you say some of your biggest career highlights have been?
Well, obviously for me, I think my professional career really started with law in many ways. So going to law school and passing the bar and being able to work with some of the top lawyers in the country who taught me so much, especially when I was very young and starting out. I really am very proud of that, and that experience has helped me so much in the work that I do now. And then another key area happened 2 years ago when I launched my first book, Poised for Excellence, and it was something, again, that I had always wanted to do. When I was a little girl, I always loved writing, and I would say, I'm going to write these books and make these little covers of books, but I didn't know what I was writing. In fact, I never really wrote more than a few pages. And so when I started my business, my mentor said, eventually you're going to have to write a book, and it was such a daunting task. The thought of having to write lots and lots of pages and put it out there, for the world to see and judge or criticize was sort of daunting to me. And so I know that before I got there, I took a route where I was writing lots of articles for various outlets, and that kind of primed the pump for me and gave me the confidence to go in deeper and write something more voluminous. And so when I launched the book and was able to share it with the world, because I went on a sort of a worldwide tour for the year, really was something that I was very proud of and still am very proud of, and it really helped buttress the work that I do. It gave it increasing credibility, and I was able to share my message in different ways with people all around the world that perhaps I would never meet.
Absolutely. And I think also just having that international exposure is also really a great achievement as well. So speaking of international, so you've obviously traveled and worked internationally. Can you please share with us more about this, and has this worked to your advantage working with different cultures?
Yes. I really have always had a travel bug, but I've never traveled more than I've traveled since I've been a business owner, and I love it because I use every experience not just to do good work for my clients, but also to explore the country that I happen to be visiting at the time. And some curious things that I found. I love people, and people love me. And I think having a very open and curious attitude about the rest of the world, not having exceptionalism, which a lot of people have depending on where they are in the world, that their country is the best country and, nothing else matters or people around the world don't matter, it's not a good outlook. And so what I found is I've learned so much about what makes us unique as individuals and as cultures, and there's so much appreciation from the landscape to the beautiful people to their language and their food. But then I've also found that we're actually more alike than we are different, and it has just been a beautiful, it's just been a beautiful experience for me, and one that I've also inculcated into my child, who also has a love for travel and, unique differences in cultures.
You have a passion for women, and as the president of the Global Advisory Board for Women's Global Leadership Initiative, can you please share with us more about this?
Yes. The Global Women the Leadership Initiative is something that really struck me because of my belief in lifelong learning and learning at all levels. And the CEO of the organization started her work in lesser developed countries,
Yes.
helping women step into leadership where they were. And that's a big principle to leadership. You meet people where they are and help them to rise up to the highest levels that they can and are willing to commit to rising to. And I love that because I felt a special passion, especially for people women particularly, who have less exposure and are less likely to be encouraged to pursue leadership roles. And I love that idea, going all the way up to, again, corporate people who are there but maybe not performing at their best. But the real focus on women on a global scale was something I found very inspirational. And then the various kinds of work that we were able to do and are able to do in the organization was extremely inspiring. And just having access, to people all around the world, and being able to share different leadership styles and experience, just incredible work.
Yes, for sure. So as a woman, you have met some amazing, talented women, obviously, throughout your career. Why do you believe so many women are still challenged when it comes to accessing funding or investment for business? And what do you believe can we do to make these changes and to help more women excel?
Well, there, of course, are a number of reasons, but one of, let me say there's probably a few different reasons. One of them is that sometimes we just don't know. We don't know where to look. And a lot of these opportunities aren't widely advertised.
No, definitely not.
For as quiet as it's kept. And there's sometimes various barriers to entry. So to be able to gain access to the capital, there's a lot of things that women don't come to the table equipped with, and they don't know that. They don't have advice and mentors to be able to show them the way. And so I think the way forward and the way to challenge this status quo is to make sure that women are more informed about the opportunities that are out there, to make sure that they have mentors and also sponsors, which are a little bit different than mentors, but really will stand in the gap, introduce them to the right people, really have those hard conversations where there are barriers to entry that they can close the gap so that women will have access and are guided along every step of the way. I think that's a very important process.
Absolutely. So that leads me to the next question. So having such a diverse and dynamic career and an associate professor of political science and pre-law student, you have such an impressive career. Do you feel that having the academics has given you a competitive edge over others? So that's always controversial.
Yeah, competitive advantage. Yeah. Here's what I have to say about that. I think that learning and academics really form the baseline for everything else that we do, and that's why at the very outset of this interview, I mentioned that lifelong learning is something that we often put to the wayside. We think that after you get the degree or after you achieve whatever level of success, you just put a period behind it. And so learning is a lifelong endeavor, and being able to work so richly in academia and learn about what is important, what the standards are, learning where there are gaps, where you can really get in and not just help in an academic setting, but also in a corporate setting or outside in a nonprofit setting. All of those things eventually really tie together, and that's why I think at my heart, I love, teaching is something that really thrives in my heart. And in my work, I do consider myself very much to be a teacher as well as an advisor, because when you are introducing these concepts and you're going through them and helping people work through them so that they can become their higher selves and overcome their performance challenges, it really is all about learning. And I think that's encouraging and exciting for people to know that you can learn anything. There's so many things to learn in life that you could learn something new every single day from the day you're born to the day you die and still have so much more to go. And I think that kind of understanding was embedded in my work in academia and has really fueled the work that I do and the mindset that I try to embed in my clients as well.
Yes, for sure. So you have a passion for political science, law, and education. Were these all specialities you were interested in, or was this just a natural transition for you? And can you share more about that?
Yeah, I think that these things were prominent at various points in my life. I went to the University of California at Davis to study political science because we decided that that was going to be the best place for me to build the foundation for my career later in law, because I always knew that I was going to go to law school. Yes. And normally they gave us a few different routes. What would be the best route? And they figured that one that was going to require a lot of writing
yes,
would be good for political science. So it was either that or history. And history was not as sexy as political science for me. So, yeah, I learned a lot about government and reciprocity and dealing with challenges in the study of political science, worldwide. So that really, I think that gave me a great foundation for, again, obviously law and the work that I do now, especially because it's on an international level. And law came right after that. And because there's a legal element in probably everything we do, it gives me great perspective in terms of advising. And, of course, education, because I believe in lifelong learning and pushing yourself to learn more and gain edge. And no matter what you do to become an expert in what you do, I think that those kind of naturally tie together, but it was a progression. And I think I would say it kind of happened naturally, but each element was prominent in different areas in my life.
Yes. Okay. So we go from one to obviously the impact of social media, which has changed our lives in so many ways. How and what would you say has this impacted you both in a positive and negative way, and what do you believe we can do better or change the current narrative?
Wow. Well, I would say this, one of the a funny little principle we learned in law school when we learned about, we do some criminal law, about dangerous weapons. And sometimes weapons can be considered inherently dangerous or dangerous in the manner in which they are used. They become dangerous, like something that you consider, nothing like a coffee cup. It can be used to maybe knock someone in the head and knock them out, then it becomes a dangerous weapon. So I think social media can be viewed in exactly the same way. I don't think it's inherently bad. I think that the negativity surrounding it comes when people do bad things with it, when they create news that's not real, and hysteria follows from that, when they use it to stalk people, to hurt people, to target children, those kind of things, a bully. All those sort of things can give it a negative narrative, and people want to shy away from it because they think, oh, it's inherently bad. It is not inherently bad. It is the manner in which it is used. For me, I was very slow to glom on to social media because I had those fears. And I also had the fear of, I think what everyone initially had, of Big Brother. You're out there and you're putting all your information out there. But an important thing that I learned early on, just because of my work as a lawyer, and I'm a pretty private person, for as much as I'm out in the world, is never to put anything out there that you would be ashamed of. And so I think kind of going through the history of my social media, and Facebook was the first platform that I joined onto, I was always careful to not put anything out there that I'd be afraid to share, sit down, in the living with my mother and share with. And I really began to use it, though, not necessarily just on a social way, Facebook, how everyone was using it, but when I started my business, it became necessary because I needed to share my message. I wanted to learn what other people were doing. I wanted to have conversations around leadership and things that were going on in the world, to meet people, to collaborate. And there's just no way. Like the way that I met you, I would never be able to do if I wasn't on LinkedIn. I wouldn't even know who you were. So
yes, exactly.
I found it, right? It, for me, that way, has been so positive, and I've met so many amazing people. I've been able to share my message and hear their message, and I've been enriched by it. So, again, it's in the manner in which it's used.
So what, even from a legal perspective, or maybe not, but, just touching on that is, I had a conversation with somebody last week surrounding certain things. So when it comes to like the personal branding or the business side of things in terms of the social media, people talk about standing up and doing what's right, and so whether it is against sexual harassment, whether it's against racism, whether it's against anything that is not right, some people are saying, you shouldn't, post and stand up on certain things using social media because it's bad for your personal branding and it leads to a negative narrative. So what do you believe, because I understand there's a fine line, but I think that in some instances, if we say we stand for something, but then we don't actually talk about it and we don't open, the channels of communication. So again, not writing it in such a way that's negative, but more just highlighting a point or highlighting a subject. So what do you say to things like that in terms of social media?
Well, I think you bring up a lot of important points and things that are tied together. Brand, for example. And people sometimes don't understand, especially entrepreneurs, how important brand is to everything else that you're doing. And by that, I mean your personal brand, which is an extension of the work that you do or the products that you sell and the services that you offer. And I think that you have to be consistent. I think that's the point. And as humans, as individuals, we're all going to feel different ways, say, about politics, about different atrocities that are going on in the world, about people in the world and what they do. We're all going to have opinions. And opinions are as diverse as people. So you're going to come in contact with that sort of conflict. And one of the things that I've established early on, especially because I have friends here in Washington, we don't always agree on politics and things like that. I've given wide berth for people to believe what they believe and have their own opinions and ask the same of them because I'm an individual. And so in expressing these views, I feel like if you feel very strongly about a position, of course, you're going to probably express it. And I think that as long as you do it in a respectful way, people are going to either glom on and they're going to agree with you and support you and give you the hand clap, or they're going to ridicule you and say, I don't believe, and, you can have that. As long as you have a respectful discourse, then I don't have a problem with people disagreeing with what I believe in. But I'm always going to stand firm in what I believe in, and I think people should do that because you also want to be consistent, and people need to know that you do stand for something. And so as long as you can respect other people in doing that, and as you were saying, not create a negative narrative by putting people down and saying people who don't believe what I believe in are wrong and crazy, et cetera, let them believe what they believe. You don't have to judge them. Your platform is your platform, and, share it in a way that's respectful.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say your ultimate vision is for yourself or for what it is that you're doing in terms of your work?
Well, I just think that, especially for the work that I do, I want everyone that I come in contact with to believe that they can become better as a leader by the work that I do, that I've given them some sort of inspiration to reach their highest selves, to achieve things greater than they have ever achieved before, because they believe that anything is possible and they can see a clear way forward. That is a stamp, if you will, that I want to put on everyone and every organization that I deal with, because I believe that that is possible. And that's sort of the inspirational message through the practical work that I share, that I want to leave people with, wanting more and having a natural desire long after the speaker leaves, long after the PowerPoints have been shared, long after the work inside the course has been shared, that they wake up on their own, that they are self-motivated to do the work and will do their best work from then on until the day that they die. That's very important to me.
Yes, absolutely. So the final two questions are, what are the 3 key pieces of advice you would give to other entrepreneurs, and what legacy would you like to leave?
Well, the legacy, I think, is tied to my vision, my mission, and helping people to solve their performance challenges and not just be better for themselves, but better for the world and the people that they come in contact to, which ultimately leaves the world a better place. And it grows, through legacy, through their own legacy. And then we have this ecosystem of excellence. And that's really, I think, the vision and legacy sort of tied together. And that's what I believe that I'm here for through this long line of different experiences, from political science to law to teaching and the work that I do now. I think that's why I'm here. And I want to make sure that I do fulfill that legacy while I'm alive, and that it lives on long after that I'm gone. If I were to give an entrepreneur, I don't care what their specialty is and what they're thinking of doing, 3 pieces of advice I would probably say to one, especially if you're thinking about it, you're not really sure, is to find something that you love and do it.
Yes.
Find something that you are entirely consumed by, that the passion is just oozing out of you. You can't go to sleep without doing it. When you wake up, you just jump to it, and you are just, you have that kind of grit that just pushes you to do it. You have to do it. And so I think that if you don't do work that's meaningful to you, then it doesn't have any impact. And so that's why oftentimes when I look at entrepreneurship, it's an extension of all the great things you've already done in work in our professional lives, and then you take it a step higher by something that really fuels your passion, and that's necessary. The second thing is to not give up. And by that I mean, because everyone's going to have bad days. They come even in the midst of, amazing achievements.
Yeah.
Don't give up. Don't listen to the critics, because people will always criticize. A lot of people will criticize because they can't do what you're doing, or they're not doing what you're doing, and they don't want you to do it. But whoever the critics are, just put them to the side. Mm-hmm. And even more importantly is the internal critic, because sometimes we are listening, or we have a running reel in our head that sometimes we're telling ourselves we don't think we can do it. Yeah. And so we have to waylay all of that and be able to move forward, right? We have to be able
and we also create stories in our own head as well, which sometimes is not.
And we believe them, because one of the things I tell people too is the most important conversation you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself every day. And we have multiple conversations.
Yes.
What goes on, the substance of those conversations, is critical to our survival.
Yes,
so we have to be careful about the things that we say to ourselves. So yeah, that's the second piece of advice. And lastly, I would say that no matter what it is that they're doing, to operate in excellence. And by that, I don't mean perfection, because perfection is a lost cause. It doesn't mean anything. It's impractical. What I mean is that they put their very best forward each and every day for each and every endeavor. And when you do that, and you are operating in excellence, then you will always be successful. So you put your best foot forward. The next day you become stronger and better. You learn from your mistakes. We all make mistakes. But when you're operating in wholesome, you prepare, you do good work, you will be successful. And I think if they think about those three things as they're moving through their entrepreneurial journey, then they won't have anything to lose.
Yes.
And fear will fall by the wayside.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Karima, for joining us today, and hopefully we can have you back in the future and see where your progress. And thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.